My name is Bill. Tonight's episode: people claiming to be time travelers. The respected physicist Stephen Hawking felt compelled to admit that time travel is possible, but has it already happened? These people say it has. We're going to hear from them tonight, and we're starting right now. We have a story at allthat'sinteresting.com by Marco Margaritov, entitled The Legend of the Chronovisor, a time machine hidden in the Vatican. And Marco begins. From the 60s until the 90s, Father Pellegrino Ernetti claimed he helped create a time machine called the Chronovisor, which he used to observe the crucifixion of Christ. The Chronovisor is said to be a device that gives the user the ability to see through time. Though the existence of the Chronovisor has never been proven, a book in 2002 by Vatican priest Father Francis Brunet says otherwise. According to Brunet, the Chronovisor was developed by Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk. Ernetti allegedly kept the device secret until the early 1960s, when he confided in Brunet and told him that 12 scientists, including famed physicist Enrico Fermi and scientist Wernher von Braun, helped him to build it. Made of cathode rays, antennae, and metals that received sound and light signals on all wavelengths, the Chronovisor purportedly allowed this team of scientists to document events of the past, including the crucifixion. The machine, therefore, could validate the teachings of the Bible simply by providing a first-hand look into the past. This a picture of Enrico Fermi. The de facto resource on the Chronovisor is Brunet's 2002 book, Le Nouveau Mystère du Vatican. In it, Brunet explains how he met Father Ernetti on a boat ride across Venice's Grand Canal in the early 1960s. Like Brunet, Ernetti was well versed in the history of ancient languages, which made for natural conversation, but soon Ernetti redirected their chat towards science. Brunet had been expounding on the many ways in which the Christian Bible could be interpreted, when Ernetti suggested that he had access to the truth by way of a time-traveling device. Ernetti claimed that he and a group of renowned scientists came together in a mutual quest to uncover the past. One scientist was Fermi, the winner of the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1938. And another was ex-Nazi von Braun, whose work at NASA got America to the moon. Not to mention the Germans, their V rockets. According to Ernetti, the device had several antennae, 3 of which were made of mysterious metals that picked up sound and light waves across their entire respective spectrums. A direction finder on the device was allegedly tuned into the specific era one wanted to view, while a screen displayed it, and a recording device captured the footage. The Chronovisor was thus more of a window into the past than a time machine. Ernetti said it worked like a television, catching echoes from days long gone that had been floating in space the whole time. And he claimed to have seen some astonishing things. Ernetti recounted how he witnessed Marcus Tullius Cicero's speech to the Roman Senate in 63 BC. Ernetti effused his gestures, his intonation, how powerful they were. What flights of oratory! End quote. Ernetti made additional, increasingly bolder claims, such as having observed the crucifixion of Jesus. From the founding of the Roman Empire to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Ernetti alleged that he and his team had taken a peek into some of the most important events in the Bible. On May 2, 1972, an Italian publication called La Domenica del Corriere published his claim, entitled A Machine That Photographs the Past Has Finally Been Invented. The article covered Ernetti's shocking statements for all of Italy to read. Alongside the admittedly dubious claims, the magazine published an alleged photograph from the Chronovisor that Ernetti claimed captured the Romans crucifying Jesus Christ. The 1972 article also purported that Ernetti had witnessed the Last Supper and kept a photograph of that biblical event for himself as a souvenir. Ernetti maintained until his death in 1994 that the machine had been hidden away by the Vatican in order to safeguard it from falling into the wrong hands. Interestingly, the Vatican decreed in 1988 that anyone using an instrument of such characteristics would be excommunicated. Shortly before he died, Ernetti wrote an open letter adamantly reiterating that the device was real. He claimed that Pope Pius XII forbade us to disclose any details about the device because the machine was very dangerous. It could restrain the freedom of man. As tantalizing as the Chronovisor may sound, many of Ernetti's claims about it have since been debunked. In 1996, Paracelsus magazine issued further critiques of Ernetti's claims. I'm trying to find my place here. Going to the end. Okay, here's the last part. Some say Father Pellegrino Ernetti confessed to having fabricated the whole story before his death in 1994, but this remains hotly contested. With Von Braun, Fermi, Ernetti, and Brune now dead, only the intriguing mystery remains. In that sense, the Chronovisor has stood the test of time as a Vatican mystery for the ages. And why did the Vatican decide to issue an advisory against the using of the Chronovisor in 1988? Let's check out some art.
The Vatican Apostolic Archives is a secret library that's hidden 2 floors underground, which is located within the Vatican that contains over 53 miles of shelving. These documents contain the true history of the world for over 12 centuries, and they are completely censored from public viewing. This secret underground library not only contains ancient historical documents, but has even been rumored to possess technology that allows someone to digitally view events from the past. Roman Catholic priest named Father Pellegrino Ernetti first leaked this secret when he was having a conversation with one of his trusted colleagues, who was also a Catholic priest from France. Father Pellegrino Ernetti was a well-renowned scientist, physicist, and music theorist in Venice. Father Pellegrino was on a ferry ride with a Catholic priest from France known as Father Francois Brune. As they voyaged down the Grand Canal in Venice, Italy, they had a long conversation which led them to discussing different biblical interpretations. Father Ernetti abruptly interrupted his colleague and said, "There's nothing to interpret. It's possible to see what actually happened, to see the truth with your own eyes." At first, his friend Father Brune thought that he was joking, but Father Ernetti assured him that he was being serious. Father Ernetti detailed about a secret project that he worked on which made its way to the Vatican Library. He detailed about a device that allowed anybody to view any event from the past, which was called the Chronovisor. This device was in the shape of a television and was able to be programmed to show you any past event on a screen. When Father Brune was hearing about this, he was in shock because Father Ernetti was known as a serious man and he was very well respected within the Catholic community. Father Ernetti then told Brune about all the biblical events that he was able to witness from the past. He claimed to have seen the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, the 10 Commandments that Moses received from Yahweh, the Last Supper, and the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Father Brune was skeptical about this at first and questioned Ernetti on how he was able to possess technology that allowed one to view moments back in time. Father Ernetti told Brune that he did not build this device himself and explained how he received help from some of the top scientists in the European hemisphere. Back in 1952, Father Pellegrino Pellegrino Ernetti was working on a project at the Catholic University of Milan where he was attempting to filter harmonics on old Gregorian chants from tape recordings as part of his studies on music theory. When he played these tapes, the founder of the university, named Father Agostino Gemelli, swore that he heard the voice of his deceased father in one of these tapes. However, this was not some necromantic audio tape where they were conjuring up the voice of his deceased father trying to speak to him from the other side. What the founder of the university heard on the tapes, however, was a conversation of his father while he was still alive where he was arguing with someone over the price of shoe wax. This is because his father previously had a job where he worked as a cobbler and he would sell shoes. Words never dissipate, but are stored in a database that will be played again at the hands of whoever has this type of capability. Ernetti decided to fund a project that he worked on with 12 different scientists. One of the scientists was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist named Enrico Fermi, who was famous for creating the world's first nuclear reactor. The other scientist was Wernher von Braun, who was the director of NASA. Wernher von Braun was most famous for creating technology that was able to defy gravity, space, and time. Once this device was completed, it started to make the news in Italy. Back in 1972, an Italian magazine called La Domenica del Corriere released an article with the headline titled "A Machine That Photographs the Past Has Finally Been Invented." The article details Father Ernetti's account of the Chronovisor, and soon this caught the attention of the Vatican. The Vatican issued an official decree on the Chronovisor, which they warned that anybody who used a device of such characteristics would be excommunicated. The strange wording of this decree raised suspicions that they still had access to this technology, since they never confirmed or denied that the Vatican had possession of the Chronovisor.
Here we have an article at paranormalscholar.com entitled "The Stone Forest. Did a visitor to Markawasi experience a time slip?" It's by Eric Roughton. And Eric begins. Nestled in the Andes Mountains near Lima, Peru, there lies a plateau inundated with a mystery known as the Markawasi. The Markawasi area is unique for the fact that the shape of its huge granite rocks are thought to resemble human faces, animals, religious symbols. Many have supposed that these shapes were created by pre-Columbian civilizations. But in fact, archaeologists have stated that the curious shapes of the rocks are naturally occurring. Because of these strange formations, the plateau is sometimes referred to as the Stone Forest, with a rich body of testimonies and stories having developed around the area. There have been many UFO sightings reported around the Stone Forest. One such UFO was supposedly captured on camera in 2013 when a visitor was filming the scenery while on tour. According to their testimony, they did not notice the strange object in the sky until later, when they checked their footage at home. Several visitors have also reported altered states of inner consciousness that have supposedly led to the development of clairvoyant abilities. And then there's Dr. Centeno's time slip patient. Author, editor, and translator of paranormal works from Latin America and Spain, Scott Corrales, has detailed an account allegedly sent to him by Dr. Raul Rios Centeno, a medical physician who described to Corrales how he had treated a patient who had entered Markawasi and was left half paralyzed. After personally having performed several examinations, Dr. Centeno found her condition to be incredibly unusual. But there were no traumatic injuries discernible or bleeding vessels to evidence the cause of her paralysis. According to Corrales' article, Dr. Centeno described how his patient, whom he keeps anonymous, stated they had entered the ancient stone forest with some friends late at night and were lured by strange music to a small torchlit cabin. Through the window of the cabin, they allegedly saw people dancing inside. According to the patient, quote, "I felt a sudden sensation of cold, to which I paid little attention, and I stuck my head in through an open door. It was then that I saw the occupants were clad in 17th century dress." It was claimed that as she started to go inside to join the party, one of her friends pulled her backwards rapidly. The half of her body that had crossed the threshold was the half that ended up paralyzed. Dr. Centeno continued to describe how, after conducting many tests, he and his colleagues were forced to dismiss the case as an unknown affliction. The patient was prescribed regular physical therapy at Lima's National Hospital in the hope that it would help her paralysis, without further attempt to explain the cause. Personally, however, Dr. Centeno is said to believe that the partial entry of this person into this anomalous zone was able to produce a change in the energy flow existing in her nervous system. The details of the case, according to Corrales, seem to suggest that Dr. Centeno's patient experienced a time slip, and that the distortion of time caused a physical injury. With a history of anomalous phenomena, could the stone forest of Markawasi also contain a portal to the past? Good question. It says Eric Rowan at the bottom. What's it say up here? Eric. That's what I said, hopefully. Okay, time for some art.
I won.
What did you win?
An invite to the after party. Tonight, after the concert, I might get to meet Vicky Lester.
What are you looking for?
Oh, I found it. Maybe I can get the band to sign it. Probably not Astra. They say she doesn't even usually go to these things.
Come on.
I should be going.
Come on.
What's off?
Nothing's happening here. I'm just...
Fuck off.
Thanks.
I'm Astra.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry. You're Astra Davies. You are my favorite guitarist.
Thanks. Did you enjoy the show?
Yes. You guys were amazing.
Just, you want me to sign something?
There was this CD, and I listened to it all the time, but I left it at home. And then I was gonna go up to the merch booth and get another one, but then that guy got in the way.
I think we're all out of CDs.
At his apartment, so I don't know how we got there. Totally lost.
And you actually stayed after that?
Well, yeah, not the whole night, but enough.
Oh my god, I don't even want to know. What are you doing tomorrow? Or, I guess, later today?
Oh, I have to go to this barbecue with my roommate.
How about I stop by beforehand to sign the CD? Since we're out of them.
You don't have to do that.
I want to.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That'd be great.
No, just use my phone. If you could go back in time, where would you go?
I guess I would go back and see some rock concerts or something.
You wouldn't change your past?
If it changed one thing, maybe it would change everything. I don't think I want to do that. What would you do?
I'd save my mom.
What happened to your mom?
My dad was a huge asshole. He used to hit her, and this one day, she died.
I am so sorry.
It was a really, really long time ago.
How would you do it? Would you, like, kick his ass or something?
No, I'd just make sure they never met.
But then you'd never be born, right?
I guess not.
That makes my rock concert thing sound extra dumb now.
No, it's fine.
I'll join you after she shows up.
Oh, is she going to show up? Sorry I'm late.
Hey, it's no problem at all.
Holy shit, you did come. Hey.
This is my roommate, Maya.
Hey, nice to meet you. You want to go for a drive?
Me?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hello, what about the barbecue?
I'll be there, I promise. I won't be long. I'm sorry. I love you, you're off the plane. Thank you. It was so sweet of you to come out and to sign it. You didn't have to. What does this mean?
Do you remember what I said last night about if I could go back and change something?
Are you fucking with me?
It's true.
That can't be true. This is impossible.
You're supposed to meet him at the barbecue. He's gonna knock over a table of drinks and food. He's gonna make a huge mess. Lizzie's gonna freak out and send everyone home.
You can't know that.
Answer it.
Hello?
Just forget about the barbecue. It's fucked now. Martin just knocked over a table and...
Bye, Mom.
Here at MessageToEagle.com is a story by Cynthia McKenzie entitled RAF Pilot Goddard's Mysterious Time Slip and Journey to the Future. And Cynthia begins, many scientists are convinced there's a number of higher dimensions and possibly several invisible worlds surrounding our own. If this is the case, then there could be so-called interdimensional time portals on Earth. These interdimensional doorways would be invisible to the naked eye, but stumbling upon one of them could transport a person to a different time or an unknown world. There are many intriguing stories about people who have accidentally entered different worlds through time portals. And one of them is Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard of the British Royal Air Force. A time portal hidden in a storm. In 1935, Goddard flew a Hawker Hart biplane to Edinburgh, Scotland, from his home base in Andover, England. It was a weekend visit. And on Sunday, Goddard decided to fly over an abandoned airfield at Drem, not far from Edinburgh. It was close to his final destination than the airport at which he landed. Constructed during the First World War, the Drem Airfield was not much to see. It was overgrown with foliage, and the hangars were falling apart. The former airport was now a farm, and cattle grazed where planes had once parked. On Monday, Goddard began the flight back to his home base, but he encountered a bizarre storm that gave him problems controlling his craft. He was flying in an open cockpit. He was flying in an open cockpit over mountainous terrain. without radio navigational aid or cloud flying instruments. In the high winds of the storm's strange brown-yellow clouds, he lost control of his plane, which began to spiral toward the ground. Goddard was unable to stop the spin, and uncertain of his location. Things looked really bad, and he feared that the rapid fall would lead to a crash into the mountains. He seemed to have little chance to come out of the clouds. As he looked around, he noticed the sky was darker than ever, the clouds now yellowish-brown. Goddard was now flying at 150 miles an hour and still falling. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally leveled out his plane, avoiding a crash. At this point, something strange happened. He looked around, trying to determine his location. To his surprise, he noticed that the sky was now suddenly bright with golden sunlight, and he was approaching the old abandoned airfield at Drem. It was the same airfield, and yet everything was different. As he looked around, Goddard noticed this was the same field, but things had changed. The hangars appeared to be new. There were 4 airplanes on the ground. 3 were familiar biplanes, but painted in an unfamiliar yellow. The 4th was a monoplane. This was really odd because the Royal Air Force had no such plane as early as 1935. The mechanics were dressed in blue overalls, which Goddard thought odd since all RAF mechanics dressed in brown. Even more curious was that no one seemed to notice him. He was flying over the airfield, but none of the mechanics paid any attention to him or his craft. It was almost as if he was invisible to the people on the ground. Leaving the area, he again encountered the storm, but he managed to return to his home base safely. Goddard told the other pilots about his unusual experience, but no one took him seriously. His friends thought he was either crazy or drunk, and Goddard decided to keep the story to himself for many years, before finally, in 1966, he wrote down and revealed his strange encounter with an unknown place from a different time. In 1939, Goddard had watched as RAF trainers began to be painted yellow, and mechanics switched from brown to blue coveralls. The RAF introduced a new training monoplane exactly like the one he had seen in his flight over Drem. It was called the Magister. He learned that the airfield at Drem had been refurbished. Did Goddard, for a brief moment, experience time travel into the future? It would seem so. How else could he have known what Drem Airfield would look like 4 years hence? His time slip was an intriguing time travel story that gives us something to think about. Did he accidentally enter a time portal while flying through the storm? The pilot's mysterious time slip and encounter with the unknown can be neither confirmed nor denied. What we can say with certainty is that there's still so much we do not fully understand about the nature of time and space. Written by Cynthia Mackenzie. Is that who I gave as the author? Yes. Let's check out some art.
Hello, fellow time travelers! Today I'll be teaching you a step-by-step method that will allow you to travel time. I have invented this method based upon my extensive understanding of the theory of relativity as well as quantum electromagnetic gravitational theory. But don't worry, I will be explaining it in a very simple, straightforward manner. So simple, in fact, that even millennials should be able to follow it. Step number 1, figure out where you want to time travel to. First, you need to figure out where you want to time travel to. It requires a complex series of calculations in order to account for the Earth's movement and space in its rotation around the Sun. Do you want to travel to prehistoric times, or to ancient Rome, or to the time of the Vikings, or to Victorian London, or, if you're a millennial, to the day that Facebook was invented? There are a lot of exciting and interesting times you can travel to. You can travel to the year 1, you can travel to the year 2, you can travel to the year 3, you can travel to the year 4.
1 hour later.
You can travel to the year 873, you can travel to the year 874, you can travel to the year 875.
2 hours later.
Step number 2. Once you have decided to which time you will be traveling, you will want to acquire some supplies for your trip. For example, if you are traveling to the times of the dinosaurs, you might want to bring a camera so you can take photographs of them. If you are traveling to the times of the Vikings, you might want to bring the Vikings TV show so you can watch it while you are there to ensure you blend in and aren't noticed. I also recommend carrying a survival pack, or what you may have heard referred to as a bug-out bag. A bug-out bag is a bag in which you place supplies that are useful in bugging out. So essentially, if you are going to bug out, you will want to have a bug-out bag. These are supplies that are useful in various survival situations. For example, in my bug-out bag, I have $10,000 in cash. You might have seen various wilderness survival type videos on YouTube, but those people are all idiots. As I will now explain why my bug-out bag is the proper type of bug-out bag. I have money so that I can buy things. This is self-explanatory if you are actually intelligent, so I suppose I better explain it for the sake of any millennials in the audience. Money is the thing that your parents have in their bank account that they use to pay for things when you ask for them. It is made of a green paper-like material and can be used to purchase things like food, Blu-ray movies, or, if you're really intelligent, subscriptions to piracy websites where you can download Blu-ray movies without paying for them. So, in a survival situation, you will want to be able to buy things. Also, money is actually worth more in the past than it is in the present. In some places, you are not going to be able to use money. For example, if you travel to the times of the cave people, they will not know what money is. Now you have selected a point in time to which you will travel. You have packed up your rig with necessary supplies. Now you will learn how to time travel. Step number 3, learn how to time travel. Step number 4, so now you have selected a point in time in which you will travel. You have packed up your rig with necessary supplies. And you have learned how to time travel. All that is left is to use your new time-traveling method to time travel to the point to which you wanted to time travel to. And that is it. If you're a millennial, be sure to take a lot of pictures so that you can post them to FaceSpace afterwards and get a lot of likes and tweetbacks. Haha, just joking, you obviously aren't a millennial because millennials have such short attention spans that they would have clicked off of this video a long time ago. So I hope these tips have helped you and that you have learned how to time travel as a result of this video. If you did, like this video, subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell, share this video on FaceSpace, share this video on Tweeting Book, share this video on the deep web, share this video on the Fortnite message board, and share this video on whatever other websites you nerds are using these days. Bye!
Here's an article at auricmedia.net by blogman Blacksmith of Truth. And the blogman writes, Time Travelers Part 3, Anne Moberly and Jourdain. And the author begins, once I studied the time travel phenomenon, I found the case of the Moberly Jourdain incident. This differs from other time traveler stories because these travelers experienced a so-called time slip, or a natural phenomenon where people just mysteriously disappear and are moved through time or teleported to another location. Travelers. Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain. Traveler type. Unofficial time travelers. Evidence. Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain published their works pseudonymously in a book titled An Adventure under the names of Elizabeth Morrison and Frances Lamont in 1911. Their current status, both deceased. Charlotte passing in 37 and Eleanor passing in 24. Here's the story of these ladies, continues the author. As part of several trips, they decided to visit the Palace of Versailles, as they were both unfamiliar with it. On the 10th of August, 1901, they traveled by train to Versailles. They did not think much of the palace after touring it, so they decided to walk through the gardens to the Petit Trianon. On the way, they reached the Grand Trianon and found it was closed to the public. They traveled with a Baedeker guidebook, but the two women soon became lost after missing the turn for the main avenue. They passed this road and entered a lane where, unknown to them, they passed their destination. Moberly noticed a woman shaking a white cloth out of a window, and Jourdain noticed an old deserted farmhouse, outside of which was an old plow. At this point, they claimed that a feeling of oppression and dreariness came over them. They then saw some men who looked like palace gardeners, who told them to continue straight. Moberly later described the men as very dignified officials, dressed in long gray-green coats and small three-cornered hats. Jourdain noticed a cottage with a woman and a girl in the doorway. The woman was holding out a jug to the girl. Jourdain described it as a living tableau, or like Madame Tussaud's waxworks. Moberly did not observe the cottage, but felt the atmosphere change. She wrote, quote, "Everything suddenly looked unnatural, therefore unpleasant. Even the trees seemed to become flat and lifeless, like wood worked in tapestry. There were no effects of light and shade, and no wind stirred the trees." They reached the edge of a wood, close to the Temple de l'Amour, and came across a man seated beside a garden kiosk. He was wearing a cloak and a large shady hat. According to Moberly, his appearance was most repulsive, its expression odious, his complexion dark and rough. Jourdain noted the man slowly turned his face, which was marked by smallpox. His complexion was very dark. His expression was evil and yet unseeing, as though I did not feel that he was looking particularly at us. I still felt a repugnance to go past him. A man later described as tall, with large dark eyes and crisp curling black hair under a large sombrero hat, came up to them and showed them the way to the Petit Trianon. After crossing a bridge, they reached the gardens in front of the palace, and Moberly noticed a lady sketching on the grass who looked at them. She later described what she saw in great detail. The lady was wearing a light summer dress. On her head was a shady white hat, and she had lots of fair hair. Moberly thought she was a tourist at first, but the dress appeared to be old-fashioned. Moberly came to believe that the lady was Marie Antoinette. After this, they were directed round to the entrance and joined a party of other visitors. After touring the house, they had tea at the Hotel de Reservoir before returning to Jourdain's apartment. And the author continues, so there you have the story. But if you are interested about this case, you can watch a movie based on this incident called Miss Morrison's Ghosts. The whole movie can be watched on YouTube in 3 parts. So just search on YouTube for Miss Morrison's Ghosts. 1 R, 1 S in Morrison's. Let's check out some art.
Explore one of the most puzzling and intriguing mysteries of the 20th century, the Moberly Jourdain incident. On August 10th, 1901, Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, 2 British academics, decided to visit the Palace of Versailles. Moberly, a college principal, was known for her intellect and composure. Jourdain, her companion, was her soon-to-be assistant principal, a meticulous woman with a sharp sense of observation. They had travelled to France for a working vacation and decided to explore the famed palace. After touring the main building, they ventured into the gardens and towards the Petit Trianon. As they moved deeper into the grounds, the women reported an unusual stillness in the air, almost like entering a different atmosphere. They noticed people dressed in elaborate 18th century attire, men wearing tricorn hats and women in gowns from a bygone era. Moberly later described seeing a man with a pockmarked face, wearing a dark cloak and large hat. She said he gave her an intense, unsettling stare. Jourdain, meanwhile, reported seeing a group of women and men dressed in what she described as old-fashioned costumes. At one point, they saw a woman sitting under a tree, sketching on a piece of paper. Now it's worth noting that this sighting occurred near the Petit Trianon, a place where the Queen often retreated to escape the pressures of court life. What's remarkable is the precision with which they described her appearance: a light summer dress, a straw hat, and a serene demeanour. These details matched known portraits of the Queen. Moberly was convinced the woman was none other than Marie Antoinette herself. The women published their account 10 years later in a book called An Adventure, but they did so anonymously. They were afraid of ridicule. After all, these were not sensationalists. They were academics with reputations to protect. Their account wasn't vague or whimsical. For example, they described a small bridge they crossed during their experience, one that didn't exist in 1901 but was later found in 18th century maps of the grounds. But what exactly happened that day? Some skeptics argue it was a shared hallucination, possibly triggered by the women's fascination with French history. Others suggest it was a case of misinterpreting a historical reenactment, though no records of such an event exist for that day in 1901. And then, there's the idea of a time slip, a moment where somehow they were able to see and experience events from another century. One compelling theory is called place memory. It suggests that certain locations with intense historical significance may retain an imprint of past events, almost like a recording. Under the right conditions, some people might be able to access this recording and perceive it as if it were happening in real time. What we do know is that the Petit Trianon was deeply tied to Marie Antoinette's emotional life. Could this connection have created an imprint strong enough to bleed through to 1901? Charlotte Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain stood by their story until their deaths. Despite facing skepticism and even ridicule, they insisted that what they experienced was real. And their account remains one of the most detailed and compelling cases of its kind.
Here at DestinationTips.com is a story by Justin Andrus, entitled The Incredible Story of Al Bielek, the man who traveled through time and space. And Justin begins, according to popular legend, in 1943, the United States Navy undertook secret experiments based out of the port of Philadelphia. These experiments were designed to put Einstein's unified field theory to practical use by making a naval ship invisible. While conspiracy theorists debate the existence of the Philadelphia experiment, one alleged survivor of the scientific outing, Al Bielek, maintained that the Navy's purpose was entirely different. According to Bielek, the true purpose of the Philadelphia experiment wasn't in invisibility, but in time travel. In 1990, Bielek claimed he had spent time in two separate periods of the future, only to return to the present and tell his story. And that was just the beginning of the fantastic revelations of this totally, completely, absolutely, 100% not fake time traveler. Who could make that up anyway? A peculiar child, by his own words, Al Bielek was born in 1927 to an otherwise wholesome family. He says his first memory came at a Christmas party when he was just 9 months old. He found he was able to fully understand the adults talking in the room around him. Growing up, he says he was known as a walking encyclopedia, easily distinguishing himself among his classmates. And what is all this stuff here? Do we have a link to go to part 2 here? Where is it? There we go, next. As a young man, duty called, so Al was compelled to join the Navy to help fight the Schmatzis. It was here that Bielek took his first trip through time. According to Al, he was just a lowly naval officer serving aboard the USS Eldridge in '43. In later years, the Eldridge will become famous for supposedly harboring the Philadelphia experiment. One day, August the 13th, 1943 to be exact, Bielek and his brother were subject to some odd happenings aboard the ship. They jumped to safety, only to land in the year 2137. The Philadelphia Navy Yard. While in 2137, Bielek was treated for radiation injuries through a highly advanced series of treatments that relied on vibration and light. What's more, the entertainment in the hospital was solely educational and news programming, the only choice of TV in the entire world. When Bielek landed in 2137, he discovered that geographical shifts had transformed the globe. The coastlines of every continent had changed dramatically. Florida had disappeared, except for the Panhandle. The Great Lakes became one Great Lake. Atlanta was 3 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. I assume he means Atlanta found itself suddenly 3 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. In 2137, Bielek said that the United States infrastructure had been completely destroyed. The central government was a total thing of the past. Both Canada and the United States were gone, ruled over with a kind of locally enforced martial law. Whoops. Got the next button. According to Bielek, around 2005, the US and Europe banded together to fight off the combined threat of China and Russia. The resulting war killed billions of people. The total population of the world will be only 300 million, and essentially ruined the world's governments. From there, Bielek says he was sent forward to the year 2749. There he stayed for 2 years before being transported back to 2137 to pick up his brother. In 2749, the world had adapted the technology to build mobile, floating cities. Government of any kind was non-existent. Everything was run by AI, or the AI called the Synthetic Intelligence Computer System, and it worked telepathically. Keep forgetting the next button. Bielek stated there were no wars in 2749 because, according to him, wars were practically impossible. There were no military or soldiers, navy or any air force, so any conflict between countries was irrelevant. Bielek reported that no one needed money in 2749, simply that there was no need to have it. Everyone had their own credits, which allowed them to buy everything they wanted at any time. Button, gotta look for that button. So at this point, Bielek is sent back from 2749 to 2137 to pick up his buddy. I think they mean his brother. From there, the duo are transported to 1984, where they meet Dr. John von Neumann, who convinces the two men to travel back to their original time, 1943, in case you're lost, and stop the Philadelphia experiment from ever happening. The two men agree, they go back, and they got the job done. After his time in the Navy, Bielek completed his education in electronics. Soon, though, he found himself contracted out to various military contractors, who slowly took the young electronics whiz into their confidence. They revealed to him that the U.S. military was actively involved in adapting alien technology and forwarding research on psychic operations. Soon after, Bielek was recruited by the Montauk Project. Though Bielek was working a job in California, his importance to the Montauk Project was so great that he was given access to the super-secret network of high-speed trains running under the country. This allowed him to work his normal job during business hours and then moonlight in Montauk for the government. Of course, once the time tunnel was perfected, he could just teleport back and forth. Throughout the 1970s, Bielek was the program director for the psychics who worked in Montauk. In that capacity, he exerted considerable control over the project and was even afforded some first-rate business trips. Bielek went to Mars on several occasions. He remembers several other trips he took with teams to a research station in 100,000 years BC. Other planets were to get canisters filled with light and dark energy, and to the year 6037. Once Bielek went public with his extraordinary adventures, the government sadly disavowed him. They did not even do him the dignity of calling him crazy. They simply let him lecture and talk because, well, maybe he was crazy. He also believed his real name was Edward Cameron, and that he'd been living for more than 100 years. Bielek believes he has not been harmed or stopped because his time-traveling experiences locked him into this timeline. Somehow, by being here today, he, among others in the program, served to balance the effects they produced with prior time-traveling experiments. It just so happened that the time travel to which Bielek was subjected in 1943 sounds an awful lot like the setup for the 1984 movie The Philadelphia Experiment, a movie in which a couple of sailors serving aboard the Eldridge are flung forward through time. Admittedly, Bielek's story differs pretty substantially from the plot of that movie from there onward, but he did have about 6 years to flesh out his backstory once he got some inspiration. In the years since Al Bielek's 1990 confessions, the conspiracy community has been abuzz with his reputed version of the events. Of course, his story has drawn some criticism, even among his own. One site debunks Bielek's stories, but does not refute the fact of the Philadelphia experiment's existence. Otherwise, Bielek's story appeared airtight. I see a bar. If you're unfamiliar with the whole Philadelphia experiment, there's much more to the cover-up than Bielek's story. Let's check out some art.
Did the United States really teleport a destroyer? The Philadelphia experiment. In an attempt to create a cloaking device, so American ships would stop getting blown up by German U-boats, the U.S. accidentally, or on purpose, depending on who you talk to, teleported a destroyer over 200 miles away and sent it back in time 10 minutes. Witnesses say that on October 28, 1943, the USS Eldridge powered on its cloaking device, and within minutes, a green mist enveloped the ship, and the destroyer simply disappeared. It then reappeared in Norfolk, Virginia, 10 minutes earlier in the day, before returning back to the Philadelphia shipyard. When sailors boarded the USS Eldridge, after it returned, it was a sight of horrors. Some of its crew were fused into the walls. Others were frozen in time. Sailors screamed in agony. Many were driven to madness. As time went on, it was suggested that these men had a loose tether on reality. They would slip in and out. Sometimes they simply disappeared. Ex-merchant marine Carl Allen sent a series of letters to the author of the book, The Case for the UFO Unidentified Flying Objects, one Morris K. Jessup, explaining the events of that day. Most people point to degaussing technology that was being used on U.S. Navy vessels to disrupt magnetic signals on mines as the origin to this story. I don't think it would be the kind of thing that the government would talk about freely. The Philadelphia experiment is not the only time Americans are said to have dabbled in time travel either. It's hard to say nothing ever happened there. Did they meet Jesus or change time? I don't know about all that. But did they experiment in time travel, telekinesis, teleportation, and remote viewing? Well, believe it or not, the CIA released documents confirming similar studies. In 2003, they released a report from 1983 talking about the gateway process. Not only does this process look at how to escape the matrix and manipulate space-time, it actually tells you point by point how to do it. They can then travel anywhere in space-time and the known and unknown universe. As crazy as this sounds, other CIA documents talk about the use of psychic remote viewers during the Gulf War in the 90s and going back all the way to the 70s. But that's a story for another day.
Here at mike-history.com, there's a story entitled A Scottish Spinster at the Battle of Nechtanesmere, 685 AD. It's written, of course, by Mike Dash. And Mr. Dash begins. Being a historian, I readily admit to a special fondness for that rarest of Fortean phenomena, the time-slip case. These are incidents in which a witness appears to travel back through time in some unexplained and unexpected way, and is able to witness at first hand an event in the past. Let's fast forward here. Fast forward 1,265 years to the 2nd of January 1950, and a cocktail party held 10 miles away in the little town of Brecon. This party was attended by Miss E.F. Smith, a lady then aged about 55, who was a resident in the village of Letham, under Dunnican Hill. According to her own account, Miss Smith left the party late, having consumed an unspecified quantity of those delicious cocktails. Driving conditions were extremely poor. It was pitch dark, and a fall of snow had been followed by rain. 2 miles outside Brecon, Miss Smith skidded her car into a ditch. There was, she insisted, quote, no question of her skid having been due to her fainting or other lapse of consciousness, nor had she been injured in any way or concussed. However, she did have to abandon her car and continue on her journey on foot, a distance of about 8 miles. Her walk was along a deserted country road, in a countryside with a few scattered farms. She had her little dog with her, but for the last 2 miles of the journey she had to carry him on her shoulder, and as she neared Letham, she must have felt fairly exhausted. She also felt nervous, for she deliberately refrained from taking a commonly used and normally welcome shortcut, because it would have taken her out of open country and alongside an area that was dark and wooded. The apparitional experience began when Miss Smith was about a half-mile from the first houses of Letham, and it continued until she reached the village. The time was getting on at about 2 a.m. End quote. In Miss Smith's recollections, the first sign that something unusual was taking place as she approached the crest of a slope from which Dunnican Hill became visible. Peering ahead, she saw groups of lights moving in the distance, which, as she walked on, gradually resolved themselves into a shadowy group of figures carrying flaming torches. A little later, a second phase of the experience began, when she noticed a second group to her right, about a third of a mile away. The third and most dramatic stage was to follow. Quote, as she watched figures even closer to her in the field, on the right, about 50 yards away, in the direction of some farm buildings which, however, were not visible in the darkness. At this stage, her dog started to growl. Miss Smith said he was sitting on my left shoulder, and he turned and looked at the lights, and I thought, next he's going to bark. Continuing as fast as she could towards home, Miss Smith left the scene and the mysterious figures behind her, and went straight to bed. Only on waking in the morning did she fully recognize how strange the experience had been. It took another 20 years for the witness's account of her evening to be recorded by a member of the Society of Psychical Research, Dr. James McHarg, a psychologist who visited Miss Smith in September of 1971, although it is not stated how he heard of her experience. McHarg found the witness still able to supply a detailed account of her encounter, and it was apparently quite credible. Quote, Miss Smith said that at the beginning of the first phase, in the distance straight ahead, she saw quite a lot of torches. Miss Smith felt that what she was seeing had not suddenly started, but it had already been going on when she came upon it. Her recalled reaction was to say to herself, well, that's an incredible thing, speaking about the nearest figures of all, which she watched during the third stage of her experience. They were obviously looking for their own dead, she believes, and she says the one I was watching, the nearest one, would bend down and turn a body over, and if he didn't like the look of it, he just turned it back on its face and went on to the next one. There were several of them. I suppose they were going to bury them. End quote. When asked about the clothing, Miss Smith said they looked as if they were, I would have said brown, but that was merely the light. Dark tights, the whole way up, a sort of overall with a roll collar. And at the end of their tunics there was a larger roll around them too. And it simply went on looking like tights until it reached their feet. I did not see what was on their feet, but they were not long boots. Miss Smith was asked about the torches the figures she saw were carrying. She replied they were carrying very long torches in their left hands. The torches were very red. Afterwards, I wondered what on earth they had been made of. Tar, I suppose. Was there tar in those days? Of course there was. It was assumed that the scene which Miss Smith described concerned the aftermath of the Battle of Nechtanesmere. Miss Smith herself freely admitted she was aware of the battle and knew it was supposed to have been fought near her home village. She insisted, however, that she knew nothing of the specifics of the fight, nor of its precise location, nor of the dress and equipment of the day. And here's a picture of that dress and equipment. This is a Pictish warrior. There are the tights. There are the rolls at the waist and at the knees. Let's check out some art. By the time Dr. McHarg had arrived on the scene, Miss Smith had long come to the conclusion that she had somehow witnessed groups of Pictish warriors of the late 7th century. No other explanation for the experience seems to have been considered. And the physical researcher Andrew Mackenzie, writing up the case, merely observes, quote, it was assumed that the scene Miss Smith described concerned the aftermath of the Battle of Nechtanesmere. Miss Smith herself freely admitted that she was aware of the battle and knew that it was supposed to have been fought near Letham. Dr. McHarg's reasons for accepting Miss Smith's experience as a genuine instance of retrocognition boils down to a couple of essential points. One concerns the flaming torches that the figures were seen that night carrying, and which the witness supposed must have been dipped in tar, though looked at closely, it is plain that there was a very great deal of assumption in the doctor's thinking. Quote, "At the time of the interview, McCarg assumed that Miss Smith meant it had been the flames of the torches that had been unusually red. But she may equally have meant that it had been their shafts. Inquiries revealed that torches in Scotland used to be made from the resinous roots of the Scots fir, which in their natural state do indeed have a distinctive red color, which would perhaps be enhanced by the torchlight. Such roots would have been available at Nechtanesmere, for Dunnican Hill was crowned then, no doubt, as it is today, with Scots fir of the Caledonian forest." McCarg's second point concerns the activity of the Pictish warriors reported by Miss Smith, and particularly the way in which the witness concluded the nearer figures carrying torches were quite obviously skirting the mere, because they didn't walk. From where I was looking straight across to the far corner of the field, they came around it. This deviation can be seen on the map McCarg prepared of the site, where it is shown by an arrow curving around the northeast lobe of the mere. In other words, they walked around a portion of the land that was boggy, I guess. And I think I tried to figure out what this was before. Here's the arrow. Open image in new tab. Here's the arrow. I guess he means this bent arrow here. How they go one direction and then another. The deviation can be seen on the map. McCarg seemed to be on especially firm ground here, because the little local loch, presumably once known as Nechtanesmere, had, it will be remembered, drained centuries previously and been turned into farmland. No local knew exactly where the lake had been, and its likely contours were effectively disguised by the gently rolling nature of the landscape. Only a few years earlier, however, during the unusually wet winter of 1946, floods had partially refilled the ancient lake, and Dr. Wainwright of Queen's College Dundee, then one of the leading authorities on Dark Age Scotland, had taken the opportunity to map the vanished loch, a task he undertook with the aid of aerial photography. As Mackenzie points out, his results, published in the periodical Antiquity in 1948, clearly showed a finger of the loch projecting in a northeasterly direction, around which people moving toward the east would have had to skirt. This is precisely the sort of hard evidence a physical researcher craves. Miss Smith was absolutely adamant that she had neither read nor even heard of Wainwright's paper before she had her experience, and McCarg was equally convinced that no one but the most practiced map reader could have accurately transposed the contours of his map to the ground as it appeared on the night of 2nd of January.
Kazirev mirrors were large curved sheets of highly reflective metal, typically made from aluminum. His experiments were quite successful. Kazirev noted when individuals sat inside the mirrors, they often reported extraordinary experiences, such as heightened intuition, telepathic connections, and even remote viewing. Kazirev's mirrors, based on the Fibonacci spiral, were working so well, the Russian government classified it as top secret. According to time anomalies in the Arctic North, published by the Subtle Energy Sciences, individuals were able to perceive past, present, and future events simultaneously. Why was it classified top secret? Perhaps the answer lies with Nostradamus, one of the most famous seers of all times. Did they know that Nostradamus used a reflective egg that he used to sit in to contemplate future events? Does it surprise any of us that on the brink of Kazirev lighting up his latest version, that he mysteriously and suddenly dies on February 27th, 1983. In December 1990, in the Arctic village of Dixon, Russian scientists conducted experiments using Kazirev mirrors.
December 24th, 1990, Tape 1. Having entered the room, we felt a kind of emotional pressure, but we kept talking as though we didn't care about it. We just couldn't keep standing around the mirrors. The fear was so strong, more like a wild terror that couldn't be explained. It seemed like a real thing we could touch. None of us had ever had such a feeling before.
This was not just physical being scared. This was abject terror. But the other thing that's interesting that happened inside these mirrors are people who experienced time travel. And often they did time travel within their own lives. Some began to see themselves as small children, like watching a movie, watching them move through their life experience, while others got inside their younger selves and had communication with the people around them. Now, some people reported they were actually witnesses to historical events. A woman reported seeing herself in a past life as an advisor to Genghis Khan. Dr. Kazariev, just like Nostradamus, were men ahead of their times. And thankfully, there are scientists today that are taking science and consciousness and merging them together finally. Are there past lives, or is there just information out there that we're tapping into?
Man Marcum coming up as our next time-traveling topic. But first, there's a story here at thesun.co.uk entitled Back from the Future, Time-Traveling Alien Planet Archaeologist Returns from the Year 6491, with a chilling warning about the future of humanity. It's written by Guy Birchall. And Guy begins, James Oliver claims to be an alien who was trapped on Earth after the super blue blood moon interrupted a transmission on his ship. James Oliver says he is an alien that has come back from the year 6491 and has said that the Yellowstone volcano could devastate America. James said, I would be very cautious about the Yellowstone volcano. As all of you know, it's overdue by about 500 million years, and an eruption that size would devastate the entire United States. And the biggest issue about an eruption like this is that it will produce a massive amount of ash into the atmosphere. And the way your transportation mechanisms work, if you were to drive or fly through one of these ash storms, your engines would be ruined. There will be no air travel the second that Yellowstone erupts. He claims he was trapped on Earth after the super blue blood moon interrupted a transmission on his ship. Further explaining his situation, he added, I'm from a planetary system that is not this one. I'm sorry I'm being very vague. I cannot be specific. It's company procedure. Essentially, what I am is sort of like an archaeologist. The time traveler continued saying he was stranded here after the super blue blood moon disrupted transmissions from his mothership. He said what happened was the geological event had disrupted the signal somehow, and I got back channels flooding into my system from outside sources, and it essentially fried the operating system of my ship, which means I'm stuck here until another research team lands on this planet. I could be here a few more days. I could be here a few more years, decades, centuries. I really don't know. I haven't gone much into the future from here. The archaeologist expressed his disappointment for being stuck on Earth, saying, the fact that I'm stuck here is a bit of a bummer, really. And all of my scanning equipment is run from my ship. Obviously, I don't have use of it at this moment. So really, I can't even be working. And that is why I joined up with this in the first place. I'm curious as to what happened throughout other worlds, throughout time and space. And I can't even do what I wished I would do. James is not the first time traveler claiming to have gotten stranded in the past this year. Alexander Smith told KISS FM's Kyle and Jackie O show he was sent on a mission to the year 2118 and revealed the future will see flying cars and humans dating robots. A young man named Noah also claimed to have come back from the year 2030 in a tale that echoes Back to the Future. Now we're going to perform some artwork here.
So you really didn't invite any chicks?
This is for my doctoral thesis on time travel. If you invite people to the party, it'll ruin the integrity of the whole thing.
So no girls?
If they're from the future, that'll be fine.
So no fucking girls?
That's pretty lame, dude.
I invite you over to my house, I give you free booze, free food, and let you play video games, and you're gonna bitch about girls. Just chill the fuck out.
You ready to rock, baby? Where'd you come from? Future. Are you the devil? Well, I might as well be. Seriously? Shit. Yeah. I need a taxi at I don't know, some giant penis tower down in Ypsilanti.
So you got any fucking nachos or what?
Just let it go.
Maybe it's a girl.
I'll get it.
There's a hard moon rising on the streets tonight now, isn't there, Tim Tim?
There's a what?
That is the phrase to get in, isn't it?
How do you know my name? How do you know about the party?
Boy? This.
Wait.
You know, for a 16-year-old, you're not that quick.
It's 17, but well, whatever.
Son, you set up a future party. This is how this works. Time to let me come in and inspect the premises. We have many unclean women from the future approaching at an exponential speed. Don't worry, boy. It's all gonna work out for you, stuff. And don't worry. Glow dick, it goes away. My leg.
Wait, so why didn't this work for Stephen Hawking?
Because he's such a wonderful conversationalist. Now, Glow dick, pay attention. We need to make this place spick and fucking span. You wait, boy. Don't worry. If it falls off, we'll grow it back.
What time am I?
Alright. What's the magical phrase to get into this fine establishment?
Ooh, I tried to teach you this in English, didn't I? Please recite. Don't make me look like an asshole for this fine gentleman.
There's an odd moon rising on the streets tonight.
Close a fucking off. Alright. Seriously, who the fuck? Oh my goodness. What century are you from, honey?
The 31st.
You're in. Just go for it. Anything you want. Like, nachos.
Hey, there's a hard moon rising on the streets tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah!
Oh shit.
My son, there's a hard moon rising on the streets tonight.
You like our flyer?
Hi, where are you guys? Habla jibba jabba?
What?
You don't even speak English? Who are all these people? In my house.
Dude, they're time travelers.
This wasn't supposed to happen, it was an experiment. What year are you from? Is this?
I'm from the 80s!
You know it's 2012, right?
Well, yeah, I've time traveled.
already gone. Oh my god, I can't believe that actually worked. How did that work? Oh, I'm gonna write my thesis, so like, who's gonna believe that? Oh no. Oh, are you kidding me? Oh my god, I got the glow dig. Wait, that's proof! Booyah!
Here's a story at mysteriesunsolved.com. I'm sorry, mysteriesareunsolved.com. Written by Nash L. And it's entitled Mike Marcum, the man who created the time machine and had mysteriously disappeared. In early 1995, Mike Madman Marcum attempted to construct a time machine on the porch of his house in Stanbury, Missouri, in the U.S. He started working on a contraption called a Jacob's Ladder. Supposedly, that's a picture of Madman Marcum. At the time, he was only 21 years old and a student majoring in electricity. His original plan was to purchase transformers, but transformers are quite expensive. He resorted to the alternative. At the local power station, there were 6 old transformers. Marcum stole the 6 300-plus pound transformers from a St. Joseph Light and Power generating station in King City, Missouri. While testing his experiments, he caused a mass blackout several blocks throughout his neighborhood. A few moments later, Gentry County Sheriff Eugene Lipfer arrested him with a warrant inside his house on January 29th for stealing the transformers. After several months in prison, Marcum was released, and then he was invited to become a guest for Art Bell on Coast to Coast Radio. He tells the story of the screw and his plans to build a time machine. He vows that from now on he will do it legally. Marcum told Art that he still wanted to create another experiment, but had neither the money nor the spare parts. During the interview, he gave his phone number and received calls for 3 days non-stop. The show helped Marcum a lot because many listeners shared with him ideas, spare parts, and funding. With his listeners' help and donations, his next time machine project was more powerful and much bigger than the previous one. While the original engine ran at the kilowatt rate, this time it was designed for 3 megawatts, because he wanted to test the machine on himself. Also, Marcum installed a rotating magnetic field similar to the one the U.S. military used in the Philadelphia experiment. He said it was more efficient. Art Bell had Mike Marcum as a guest again about a year later. He claimed to be experimenting with a more sophisticated time machine, whose electromagnetic vortex was big enough for a man to walk into. Mike Marcum vanished in 1997 and hasn't been seen or heard from since. Shortly after Marcum disappeared, a listener called the Art Bell Show to talk about a strange story he had found. In the 1930s, police found a dead man on a beach in California. He was crushed to death in a strange metal tube. The man was unrecognizable, and a mysterious device was found near his body. The callers said the device looked like a cell phone. Let's check out some art.
In 1995, college student Michael Marcum decided to create a fairly basic science experiment. A Jacob's ladder is an experiment where 2 metal rods are held apart from each other, and when enough volts are applied, electricity will arc between the two. Normal household outlets can only supply up to 110 volts. So, he would have to build his own transformer, Mike would also modify this experiment using a laser from a CD player. This was the catalyst that created his time machine. In the center of the ladder, Mike saw a circle of air that appeared to shimmer. On a whim, he decided to throw a sheet metal screw into this vortex. That screw would disappear for all of half a second before reappearing just a few inches away from him. In the dead of night, Mike would take 2 of his coworkers and they would head to their local utility company. There, the trio managed to spirit away 6 electrical transformers. These transformers were about the size of a trash can and weighed between 250 and 350 pounds each. With his professionally built transformer and 2 steel poles instead of the wire hangers he was using, Mike would get his bigger light show. Don't try this at home. This would look pretty cool. The late great Grant Thompson has a video with a similar amount of voltage, but he would only use coat wire and had a 4 to 6 inch gap between the poles. Mike himself was using steel pipe that was 2 inches around and 4 foot tall. You'd be able to get a gap of up to 18 inches. I imagine it would have looked a bit like this. At this stage, he just kept throwing in sheet metal screws and oranges, all with similar results as the first. Of course, Mike did steal these transformers from the electric company. These were valued around $16,000, and he was soon apprehended and spent the next 60 days in jail. Thanks to his experiments, a lot of folks in town had their home voltage dipped down to 60 or 70 volts. Whenever Mike turned on that machine, he was supposedly frying a lot of his neighbors' electronics. He would continue his experiments. On April 18th, 1995, this Jacob's ladder, if you could still call it that, now stood 30 feet off the ground and could now handle upwards of 3 million volts. The gap between the poles was now large enough for a man to crawl through. Mike would invite his 25 to 30 donors to his warehouse for his final test. Mike was on top of a cherry picker standing 30 feet off the ground, and soon after, Mike crawled through the spark gap. Mike would describe the feeling of passing through this gap as like a flashbang going off in his head. A second later, Mike woke up in a field. There was one problem, however. Mike didn't know who he was. It took a few minutes for him to even remember his own name. He found his way to Fairfield, Ohio. If he had remembered anything, he would have realized that he was now 800 miles east of where he had started. His memories would come back to him in bursts, and with no money and no ID, he would spend some time in a homeless shelter while he pieced his memories back together. Looking at a newspaper the next morning, he made a shocking discovery. Michael Marcum had crawled through that spark gap in 1998. He woke up in a field 800 miles away in the year 2000. 2 years of his life were gone, and generally, the public seems to agree. For those 2 years, his family couldn't find him, his friends, his donors. Even Aunt Belle thought this man had dropped off the face of the earth. And when he returned to his warehouse, it was all gone. His machine, his notes, his camera, and any information he had on his donors. He had been gone for 2 years. Mike only had the lease on the warehouse for a few months. That's where Mike's story ends. A lot of rumors had sprung up around Marcum, such as him being homeless in Hawaii, or even that of a body found in the metal tube in the 1920s that was said to look strangely like Marcum. Then again, maybe that was him. He just hadn't gone back that far yet.